So, folks, what we'll be doing today is thankfully the tax ATI client is working now. So, I'll just walk you through that lab practical that we had to do last time, which we couldn't, and a couple of more topics which I would want to close. We'll be also looking at MISPEN, Multigo as two tools which I want to close with you. Um, Also, we'll just walk through just one or two more concepts that we need to finish off, and I will then discuss your quiz and also just discuss how your final exam is going to go about. So that's how we'll close today. Uh, so what you can do is just open your Jupyter notebooks that we last time worked on. Sorry, just give me a sec. Once all of you have your Jupyter notebooks open, just let me know. I'll start then. Let me know once all of you have your notebooks running. Just let me know and we'll start then. Do we have a notebooks running?
It's for me. It's like I'm just working on it. Just 2 minutes.
Sure. Are we good to go now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So if all of you have your attack notebooks, I mean, if you have a Jupyter notebooks running, last time, if you remember, we were trying to interact with the attack CTI framework itself, right? And importing sticks and taxi feeds in the raw format. So what we're going to be doing is just, there was an issue with the server earlier. It's functioning currently. So I just want to take you through this because it's a little fairly important to understand what we can do and what are the capabilities for this. So uh, first things first, what we'll do is, like last time, we'll start with importing the attack CTI framework by typing import attack underscore client command, right? If you run this and you get an error here, let me know. If you can run this command and work with it clearly, then it's fine, you can proceed. In terms of installation, we require three libraries here. Number one being attack CTI, secondly being pandas. JSON should be there by default. In case you're still facing an error there, just let me know. So just run these three commands. I'm also going to be sharing them on Slack, on Teams. Give me a second. Yeah. If any of these three commands lead to an error, let me know. That means you've got an installation issue. We'll have to install the libraries. In case they're working, then we can proceed.
I ran the first command. It's giving me the model not found.
All right. So for that, what you need to do is just open your terminal and just run a command called pip install attack cti. If this command doesn't work, then just try pip 3 install attack cti. If none of them work, let me know. Did we get them running? Any errors we're facing? Folks, are we here? Are we not here? Any?
I've just ran those commands. I'm just looking at it. Once again, I'm just running the uh,
Okay.
first one.
What about everyone else? Do you have the commands running? You don't have it? Any errors?
Yeah, it's running for me.
Okay. Anybody facing any errors?
Worked for me.
Perfect. Okay. All right. That means we have all libraries we require, right? So we can proceed thereafter. So this part is invoking the attack CTI library. What this library does is it basically communicates with the open taxi server that the attack framework have hosted, right? From this server, anybody can communicate to this and get their data. Otherwise, you have to communicate to taxi servers which are listed where you will require authorization tokens. So there's a whole sign up process. So this is an open server that they've left for everybody else to consume. So the attack CTI library, what it does is it interacts with that server, gives you a couple of simpler commands than actually trying to code everything in an API format. You can use the API format as well. At the backend, it's using nothing but the Python API commands. That's about it. The second row that you're seeing is that we're importing pandas for data structuring. So we will see a lot of JSON data that is going to be coming out. So we're using import JSON because of that to process that data. And we're using pandas to basically clean out the data a little bit and show it in a more representable form so that we can basically have a look at it and understand it. The third aspect, what we're doing is we're going to initialize a variable over here, which is basically you can call this anything you want. I've called it lift or anything, whatever you want. You can term this ABC, whatever you think is useful. And what we do is we initialize the function for the attack client over here. So what you're doing is you're initializing the attack client. This command was not working with us. So this basically actually hits the open server that we have to initialize all the authorization that we require into the variable called lift, right? So if you run this command, it should basically take about 10 to 15 seconds to run. Once it's done, if you want to know what's inside this, you can print this variable, but it's basically just an object containing authorization headers, right? Using this, we will be able to hit multiple fields for attack and get data from there. So that is what we're going to be doing. The first thing that we can do, so like I told you last time also, uh, anything and everything that we have over here, we can pull that data out, right? So let's start with the techniques first. So to initialize techniques or to get technique data, what we do is initialize any variable that you want. You can call it techniques or whatever you think is fine with you, right? And what you do is you use a object that you've created, and if you just hit a tab over here, you will get all the functions that it basically has inbuilt, right? So in case you want, you can type the function out itself. In case you hit a dot and you hit the tab button, you will get all the functions that basically we can trigger from this, right? For now, we're not going to be doing filtering, so we're just getting using the get techniques function right now, right? So for that, what we do is we select the get techniques function, or if you want to type it out, you can type it out and you hit and you run this row. Let's check out what we've got here. You'll see that you have all the technique information that exists on this site. So for enterprise, we basically pulled out everything that we have over here. Okay. Additionally, if you want to see how many rows you've got, you can just take the length of this. So we have total 761 techniques that we've defined and we've got from the system. This modifies over some time. It doesn't modify every day. Only when a new technique actually comes in, this will basically get updated. When you hit this and you refresh it. So tomorrow, if I'm using attack CTI and if I want to get all the latest techniques, you can hit this even once a month, where you just connect to the API and we get all the techniques and we just enrich them again. Anybody facing any errors here?
I'm not getting the output for the print.
Just share your screen. That's because your earlier command hasn't also finished yet. Let it finish, it'll immediately come. Just wait for like 10 seconds.
Okay.
So when you see an asterisk on that, when you see line number asterisk, you will see that it's still running. Now that it's changed to a number, that means it's completed running. And once that is completed, this is sequential, so it will wait for one command to finish to run the next. Okay. Uh, So what we've done now is we've got all the techniques, right? Now, this is a very messy way of seeing all this data. So what we'll do is now we'll use pandas to basically stringent out this a little bit to clean it out, to make it more in a readable format so that we can understand what data we're seeing. So what you can do is just define another dict that what we're going to be doing. Everybody is aware of how to define dictionaries and what I'm doing, right? It's not like this is new. Okay, everybody is aware of what a dictionary and a list is.
Not much.
Okay, all right. So when we have JSON formats coming in, right, we tend to use a dict function. So this is basically the dictionary slash list slash tag slash, uh, you know, heap slash kind of things, that data structures that we have. So in this, what we're defining is a dictionary. I will show you why we're defining a dictionary as well. In Python, when you define a dictionary, you just basically give it square braces. If you want to define a list, you just convert this into curly braces, right? So this is how you tell the function that this is what I'm trying to define, right? This is basis of the data that we want to see and the type of data that we're getting. I'll show you why I've chosen a dict and why I've not chosen a list, etc. as well very soon. But that's how you define it in Python, right? What we're going to be doing is, now that we have multiple techniques defined in this variable that we have, which is basically which we call techniques or whatever you've named, let's iterate over all this. So just define anything. Okay. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going over each technique and I'm going to be segregating this row by row, right? I told you that I defined it as a dictionary. Why did I do that? If you see this, the option that you're getting from here, from the API itself, is a dictionary, right? That's why I defined a dict. So how did I know that? If you still want to figure that out, you can just do something called as type of techniques. Oops, my bad. This, okay. You will see there's a list. In list, that what we're getting is we're defining this. So the data that you see over here, right? What they mean by is a list is one row contains all one information for one single field that you're getting, right? Now what you're going to be doing basis of this is getting this information, we're going to be iterating over it and we're going to start storing it in a custom way that what we want. So we'll just clean this data out a little bit, right? For that, what we're going to do is we get into this function. This you can name anything, it doesn't have to be I, it's just a iteration function that you've got, right? For this, what we're going to be doing now is the list that we've defined, right? We're going to just append all entries that we're seeing, and what we're doing is we're going to be loading this entire JSON out. Yeah. So what I've done here is I've taken this list. I'm appending all data row by row. And because this data is in a list format, I'm going to convert it into a JSON format, right? So that's what I'm doing. I'm converting it into a JSON format. So whatever data is coming in, I'm going to be breaking it at every list entry item and appending it there. Okay. So what I will get is a row by row kind of information that I get in terms of tracking this onto a cleaner format that I'm trying to look at. So I'm just trying to divide this into a row by row format. Why I'm trying to do this is because in a data frame, I can clean this data out and there's a certain input format that the data frame requires. We can't just load arbitrary data inside this, right? So if you run this, okay, if you face any errors on this line, let me know. The next thing what we're going to do is we're going to define a data frame that we have, right? So again, just a variable that I'm taking in. And what I'm going to do now is take all the data that we have in this list that we've defined. So oops, okay. If you're getting this error, also just go back here where you said from pandas import star. You can just change this to and yeah. So the only changes what I made is I've just called this as a variable. So whatever library information that we had for pandas, I can refer it to this. You can change this into anything that you want. It doesn't have to be this. It's just a name. And I've referenced that name over here. So now what you will see.
I'm getting error in the 20th line. It's saying that attribute error. Object has no attribute append.
Just share your screen, please. Okay. Are you using curly braces in line 10? Just convert this to square braces. Just run this line. Now run the 11th line. So why that wasn't working is you were defining a wrong data type for that, and the data type that we were trying to pull in for JSON and the data that we had was not matching.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Now that I've loaded this into a data frame, right? What we've done is the entire data that we were capturing, I've just taken it row by row, and you can just keep going and reading the, if you want to see the entire data set, you can just do a print of the data frame that you have. You will see this. If you want to see this in a clearer way, you can just do a df.head. These are all data frame functions. How I know this is if you sorry, did it have to restart right now? Okay, I'll just show that to you. I have to close my screen for that.
Do we get auto suggestions
In these, yes, you do. You can just do df. Keep using your tab button dot. So these are all functions that you're getting. If you just hit dot tab, you will get all this all the functions that df has over here. So if you go here and just type,
Developer.
yeah,
Yeah.
you will get that. So you will get them. Now what we see here is a lot of data, right? Now you might say that I require something, I might not require something. There are too many fields. I just require one or two things of them. So what you can additionally do here is we can just use a function of the data frame, which is basically called as reindex, right? What reindex does is you pass it column names, and what you can get out of that is the exact columns that you require. There are two ways to do this. There is a data frame option of reindex, and there is a data frame option for drop. Okay. uh, Reindex lets you do this in one shot. So what I can, if you do a, okay, sorry, you don't need to run print command for this if I'm not wrong. Yeah, okay. If you just do a df dot columns, right, you will see that there are these many number of columns, right? If I don't want something which has already everything has nan in it, for example, if I want to drop this column, right, what you can do is you can use a df.drop command as well and give the column name in the function. It will drop that column name for you. Oops. Now they must have changed something. Let me check. Okay. All right. So this is has to be a list, and we have to define accesses. All right. So what this does is that you can drop one column at a time, right? Because of this. Or if you want to draw multiple columns, what you can do is you can just use the reindex function over here. What reindex basically does is it can drop multiple columns, or you can just you can do it two ways. You either select that I want to drop one column or two or three, or you can just do it the other way around, that I just want these 4 5 columns, right? So this is just a cleanup activity. You don't need to do this. I mean, I'm just trying to show it to you that we can clean this data out as well and structure it to whatever we want. So for example, if you want created, you want the name, you want the description, right? And say you want the platforms as well. Okay. What we do next here is we define it on an axis and we run this. What you will see here is that only those specific column names start showing up. If you want to modify this, you can modify it. You can keep adding or deleting column names that you want. So if you want,
The base data frame is getting changed, right?
yeah, we are not modified, we are not feeding this data back to the data frame right now. If you want, you can do it. So for example, if you want to export this or something, you can create a new data frame out of this by just defining a second data frame here. And if you want, you can export this entire data frame to say CSV also. If you want, uh, you will have to give a path and you will have to give a name, and that's about it. So it's up to you. I'm not feeding this back to the data frame. If you want, you can feed it back, but I'm just trying to show you that we can modify this data as well. How we got this entire data here is, if you want to see what each row looked like, this was one row which we basically converted into this. If you want to see the second row, you can keep incrementing this number. So basically that's what we did in this function. We just kept incrementing the number that we had in techniques and we kept loading it in this data frame, right? So this is the original data that we get. You can keep incrementing this and seeing this. What we've done is we just changed the format of it to a cleaner format so that we can read it properly. If you want to see the structure of it, this was your data frame that you had. These are the columns that were created. So out of these columns, you can just put in anything over here and you will get that column name. So for example, if I also want detections to come in, you can just copy this here, run it. You will also see the detections coming in.
Can you just share these commands in the chat window?
Yeah.
So I'm getting all, I lost all the, it's showing NAN. After
All of them.
I lost, I think.
Just share your screen. I'll have a look.
Yeah. So till this was okay. Till here it was going okay. You can see it. I'll make it a little bigger. And I did this. It's still okay. After this, it just lost all the data.
Okay, I'll show you why. Just go back up. Okay, so in df.drop, it deletes the data from the list, right? df.reindex does not.
Oh, sorry.
Right? So if you just go back up, you'll have to recreate the data. Just go back up. Yeah. Just run command 17, 30, 19, 20 again. Yeah.
This reindex is okay, I suppose.
Yeah.
Not
drop basically removes the data altogether. It doesn't let you basically go back to it.
right.
Drop is like delete.
Oh, still I think it is not.
Let's go back up. What do you? Just print df once before you run all this. Just run a command df.head or something. Just run df.head once.
One second, maybe. Yeah, this is the one. df.head.
Okay, this is running now. Come down. That means the data is there in the data frame. Just come down now.
Index, columns is also fine. This is okay. Reindex, this will be access equal to 1 only, right? It will column only.
Yes. So basically in the
here it is losing the data.
So in the reindex command, what you're telling it to do is basically show you only that one column. That one column only has NaN information in it. So just change that to name once.
But
it's not that all rows. It's not that all rows has it. It's when you do a df.reindex etc. It shows you the first 5 and last 5 rows only.
But see, if I say df.drop this column, that is also okay, right?
That will just delete the entire column from the data frame itself.
But
Reindex
then
doesn't do that.
I'm losing everything else.
You're not losing it. Just type name instead of X meter impact type. I'll show you what you're getting. Just run this. Okay. Now just copy the tactic type that you had. Yep. Change the name to tactic type, or just add it in front of name. Yeah, now run it.
I'm
So
losing.
you're not losing
Oh.
it. That information is not available there
Ah,
already,
okay,
right?
okay.
Because this is not printing the entire data frame out for you. It just prints the first 5 and the last 5 rows. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. So the data is not there. That's why it's saying NaN. I think data itself is NaN.
Whenever the data is blank, it filtered with NaN.
Okay. We can say, okay. So all this is actually correct then. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
I'm just sending you my notebook. Give me a second. I'm gonna share my notebook with you. You can just use that itself.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Uh, Now we basically got data in terms of just techniques, right? But if we want, say, data source with it, if we want mitigations with it, if we want groups with this data, right? What we basically will do is there are ways of getting this data with that information as well. You can either modify this here, but what I would suggest is that you just keep this separate. I'm going to be now replacing this. So the same variable techniques that we had, right? We had used something called as lift.get underscore techniques function, right? This is what we used last time. What we're going to do additionally this time is just going to parse it one parameter, which is basically called as enrich data sources is equal to true. Okay. When you run this and just let it get that data, so this will also answer your question why we were seeing nan over there, right? Now I'm just going to start adding data in those nan columns. Okay. Now this is, oh, where did it break? Yeah. So what you will see here is now in this we start getting data source name information as well. So whatever you were seeing as nan come up, that is because when you call the default techniques itself, it only provides you technique data. If you want to start interacting with it in terms of with data sources with information as well that you get, you can just start calling this with data sources as true, and you will start getting this information from you from there as well. If you want to see what all data sources we have, you can just run another loop if you want. As well, let me just take it as one row first. So just give me 1 second. I'm just seeing if Okay, I'll just come back to this. Let me see what the issue is. Maybe we're not getting the entire data here, or there's some problem with one field. Okay, the next thing, I will just come back to you on this. Why we're not getting this information. But ideally, if I just want to show you manually, what I'm trying to show you is that in the techniques, if you just iterate over this, right, and you keep hitting this, you will get every data source that is basically trying to look at, right? So earlier what we were getting is one data source per row in the original techniques that we were calling. Now when we do it with data sources true, you will get all data sources that basically combine with one specific attack, right? So you're getting multiple rows of one same column that we're looking at. So what you see over here, right, if there is one thing that you see, let me just open one of them. If you want to see all this information regarding to one thing and its linkages and the data sources that are associated with it, right, and the mitigations that are associated with it, we can start pulling in this information that we're getting via the API itself and pulling this in a structured way so that we're getting all the information together. So either you can hit tactics separately, techniques separately, data sources separately, or we can use this to tie it up as well. Okay. Uh, how we can use it separately now is another thing that let's get. So very similar thing what we're doing now is instead of techniques that we were pulling in, now we're pulling in all groups that we can get. So for that you can just use the function groups is equal to lift.get groups. And once this is done, you can just print this and see this is basically going to give you all the intrusion data for each group that exists, right? So for example, in ABD28, what is the techniques that are associated with it? What are the information or softwares that are associated with it? What are the tactical information that you have with it? So all that information basically starts coming out to you. Again, if you want to check how many there are, you can see this and compare it here, that so that we know that we pulled out all the groups. So this number matches, that is fine, right? Again, if you want to print this into a pretty way, we can just use the same technique where we just change this around. Sorry. Let us write that. Okay. Yeah. Why I wasn't getting the data was because I had replaced groups earlier when I had ran the command. So I just took that same, I just lifted the group part again. So this is nothing but what we'd done earlier as well for techniques. You just basically created a list for it. In that list, you just appended every group, and then we're just reading it out a little more prettier. So that's about it in this. All these things that you're seeing over here are the group names. So if you go say over here as well, and if you see the same group names here, that same information you're going to be pulling out here as well. In this also, you can keep hitting it and getting more and more data for this. But this is basically how you pull in all the groups. And similarly, if you want to pull in all software, right? So just remember that whatever data you have, you can pull it out from this in a very similar way. So you can just make this software and do, if you again hit tab, you can come down, you will get something called as get software, right? And then you can just follow the same process that we followed. Just change the variable names, otherwise you will not get the expected result. And so now what you've done is basically you've got all the software lists. So if I just go to software over here, this entire data set that you're seeing over here, right, which is like 680 things, you will basically get all that software here. If you want to just make sure that you got all the rows, you can just do, so you'll see that you have all softwares that you pulled out from here. That entire information is now available with you. Is this part clear? Folks, clear, not clear, understood, not understood?
This is just see,
Yes, sir.
three things we have tried to do. We tried to get the groups, we have tried to get the techniques,
So
we have
now
tried this.
what you can try is just try getting the, so we've done techniques, we've done groups, we've done software, right? What you can additionally try is relationships as well. Similarly, what we've done, you'll just do a lift dot get relationships. You can see that data. And if you want data sources, you can basically see all data sources. And if you want data components, you can do data components, right? So this is just basically fetching data that we see on this. So software, groups, mitigations, data sources, all of these you can get in the same way. The only thing that will basically change again and again is if you come here. So the only thing that will keep getting changed is this. So you can get data components, you can get data sources, you can get enterprise, the entire thing. If you only want for ICS, you can get for ICS. If you want only for mobile, you can get for mobile, right? If you want only tactics, you can get tactics. If you want only techniques, you can get techniques. I'm not talking about filtering right now. You can filter these as well, but I will get to that, right? So all these things you can pick up and get individually, or you can get the entire thing. That is up to you. Is this clear?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just sharing my notebook with all of you. Folks, just take a 10-minute break. We'll come back and we'll start with the filters. Then I'm just sharing my notebook with all of you in case you guys have not managed to do this. Then you can basically do this at some other point in time. But yeah, I've sent it to you. Cool. So let's just take a 10-15 minute break and we'll come back and we'll start with the filters and we can then work on that. So I'll see you at 11:20, I think. Yeah. Hi folks, are we back?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, perfect. Okay, now that we've seen how to collect all data, right? The second part is that if we want to collect specific data, so how do we filter over these aspects of data? So, for example, if I only want one specific technique, if I only want one specific group, how do I do that? In that, basically, what we need to do is let's just define, say, these are techniques I have, and if I want to pick up one specific technique and details according to that around that technique that I want to get, right? So there is a function which basically says, say, get technique by name, right? And in this, we can just put in, for example, if there is that one technique, right? How do you get this is that you can use any name that exists over here, right? And pass that name in the lift object that we've got from attack. If you print this technique, you will only get details for this one technique that exists. For example, that's one run DLL the 32.exe. So if you want to pick up specific information for any technique, you can just pass the name for that technique over here and you can get that information here. And if you just type this again, you don't need to print these functions, right? So all techniques that exist with the name run DLL32.exe, you can get all those technique details over here. If you want to look at just one of them, you can do that. If you want to look at the other one also, you can do that. Again, cleanup, etc. Data visualization can follow the same process that we've done above, but this is basically a standard that you can get in terms of just picking up one specific technique by the name. You can also do it by the ID if you have it. There the function basically changes to dot get technique by ID. So you can basically do it by individual content, data source, platform, relationship, tactic, right? You can also do it by mitigation, by data component, by since time, by groups, right? So you can get any specific technique that exists as well. Where is this helpful is when you are specifically looking for a targeted attack, or you know details about, say, some attacker is going to be using a specific methodology to attack you. What all other techniques, what all other tactics that they use, what groups basically use those tactics, you can get all that information here. Another thing that we can do over here is that we get the data sources by the technique itself, right? So for this, and for this, if you just see this, what you will see is all the data sources that you have over here, right? You can pick up the same data sources and get them. If you want it for a specific name, you can also do it by get by name, and you can just get that one specific data source as well. And that will basically help you out with all this information that we see. Now, in terms of let me just share the browser. Yeah. In terms of where this is useful and how do we use this is you have your multiple sources that are basically looking at solutioning coming in, right? You have predictably one SIEM that is capturing this. Now, whenever you see an alert come up from here, which basically says that somebody is trying to use, say, a WMI kind of attack, or say is trying to use a run DLL32 dot kind of attack, etc., right? What you can do is using this information, you can get data from attack to get what are the tactics that they will use, what are the techniques they will use, what are the groups that target using this technique, right? When you get this information, what you can do is go back to that group and you will have your entire playbook available with you in terms of how you can capture, contain those attacks. Additionally, you will again have hashes that you can use. So all this information will be able, you will be able to correlate and get this information for any sort of attack that you're getting. Again, for example, if somebody is using evasion techniques or say is using some specific technique that you got. So for example, somebody who's using evasion or active directory attacks or any kind of things, right? So this you can again hit by name to get those specific tactics, techniques and groups, and you will have much more information in terms of which type of attacker uses this, which type of group uses this, what type of attacks do they launch. And the best part is that you will be able to also get mitigation techniques against those. So when I say that these things are used and these things are, I mean, why we're going through this and why did I say that it's important is because either your SIEM does this for you over here, or you just have a passive box where whenever an alert gets triggered, you pass it to this passive box and it basically hits attack frameworks and gets this information for you. You can additionally enrich your alerts with all this information when you're sending it out. Does this make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. The next thing that we can do is we can also get information from, we've seen multiple IDs like T1, T100, T something, T blah, 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 right? How do we get information from that? So basically there is something called as object by ID, right? So all tactics that you seen or all objects that you see, right? They have specific IDs assigned to them, and these IDs we can basically get the entire attack pattern from, say somebody gives you a report that says that this is vulnerable to say T1103 for example, right? then you can go ahead and get all the details for that by just saying get. So there is something called as get object by attack ID, right? And what we can pass in this is, say you want the attack pattern for say T1103, okay, and you can just hit this. Yeah, and sorry, you will basically get all information regarding to this specific tactic method that we have, and get all the information in terms of the groups, how we can get it, what type of attacks are there, what are the keys, what are the registry keys, how do we mitigate it, all those kind of things you can get from this itself. Additionally, there are specific groups as well that we looked at. So we've done something as group name, right? What you can additionally do over here is use something called as get group by alias over here, and anything that we see here in these names, right? For example, if you want to get say cozy bear as well, sorry, there's a space there. So if you want to get information for this specific group, you again hit it by alias, and we have all the intrusion sets details for this entire group. Okay. Additionally, we've seen that we want to get techniques, right? And we've been getting a lot of techniques, but how do we get techniques with mitigations there? So I want to also get details in terms of how to get those techniques by mitigation. How do I mitigate those techniques that I have, right? So there is something called as get techniques mitigated by mitigations. And what we do over here, so this is one row that I printed. What you will get over here is that every technique, what are the mitigation actions against it, you can get that information. So now on every alert, you have additional information about the techniques, the tactics, the mitigations, the software, the groups. If you want to get specific information about one specific group, you can get that. In case you want one technique that somebody is using and how you can mitigate that technique, you can get that specific thing as well. Why these are important? You can standardize your incident response because these are standard techniques that people use to mitigate such responses that we're getting. And this is how your SOAR actions that basically come in are defined. So when you see default kind of access that, uh, for this kind of attack, we take this kind of mitigation techniques, etc. Uh, that is how your SOAR platforms define it, because these techniques are used globally, are defined well, and we can basically take a very listed kind of action to say to mitigate a specific kind of technique that somebody is trying to use. Again, I said techniques can be multiple, right? Sorry, tactics can be multiple, techniques will still remain the same. So any kind of attack that you're seeing, you will be able to get a very specific way to also mitigate that attack. Now, whether you want to just feed this into your alert so that your SOC engineers have a good information in terms of what they need to do, or do you want to automate this process that if you see this kind of technique coming up, you tell your SOAR platform to basically go take 10 this actions to mitigate them. Whether they're stepwise, whether they're sequential, you can get all of that information here. Any questions here? Okay. Additionally, even for software that we've seen, right, we can just get all software first if you want to filter out softwares. And if you want to just do this for one specific one, we just take the first one there, and then we can basically just define and you can just pass this one software here. And what you will get are all the techniques specific to that one software. So for example, if you wanted information for, say, the specific software that we have, what are the techniques used for it, this information you can get from there. So any permutation combination that you can probably think of, right, you can pull this information uh, either in full, or you can do it in real time by hitting it just for one specific software group, mitigation technique, tactic, anything that you want. Similarly, one more thing that is important is, for example, you want to see softwares that are used by one specific group. How do we do that? So there is one more way to do that is and in a similar way what we had done over here. Just give me a second, please. Yeah. So once you get the groups over here, you can just get one specific group like we've done for software as well, where you just take one specific group there, and what you do there is you pass that one group that you've got, and you can get all the softwares that you get that one group will use. So over here you'll see all the softwares that they use, what kind of trojans do they use, what are the hash values for that, all that information basically you will get here. Does this make sense?
Yes.
So are we clear on how we can basically use this information? I know you've seen a lot of information, you've seen how we can extract that information. Is it clear in terms of how we can use it in real systems, and how do we actually put this into a system and use it?
That will be a little challenging for them. We know that we are getting the data, and now how do we marry it to the real logs which are coming in?
Okay, let me give you one example. All right. Uh, let's say you have a device, right? This device punched a log to your SIEM, and you basically got a log saying that, for example, Cobalt Strike was being used as a user agent. Wherever the source is coming in from, I'm not concerned about that, right? You just saw this as a user agent in one of your lines. Now, what you can do, like I said, threat intelligence is always there to aid you, right? It will not be a definitive kind of answer that you're getting. So what you will do is you will hit this to attack. What you can get is all the tactics that are used for this, what are the groups which are in with this, and what are the techniques that are used with this, right? Now, for example, in return, I get that these are the tactics that we have seen with Cobalt Strike. These are the groups which basically use this, and say these are the techniques that they use. Okay. Till now, there is nothing that needs to worry me. I've just seen this. It can be anybody in the world who's just trying to use Cobalt Strike against my site, right? Or my infrastructure. Now, for example, you see another log line which comes in from any of your device by saying, okay, run dll32.exe was also trying to be executed, right? Or we're seeing another log line which says tactic, say evasion, or you see people trying to masquerade a process over here. What I mean by that is you are running PID, say 4570 as chrome.exe. And similarly, I've got another PID which is 4571, which is again chrome.exe. Is masquerading clear to all of you? Do you know about it, or do you want me to explain it to you?
Yeah, I think it's just hiding. I mean, it's has a different name.
Running as
Running
a
as a
different process.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So any parent process or sorry, anything that you define will have a single parent process can have multiple child processes, right? So when I say a PID, I'm saying a parent ID that I'm seeing of a process is something, and I'm seeing another PID of the same kind of tooling that we're using with a different PID, right? So you again get an alert from say one of your systems which says that okay, masqueration is or somebody's trying to masquerade a process as well. Now, what your threat intelligence systems do is it ties one, ties two, ties three. Okay. When you were individually running it, you were getting multiple inputs coming in from it. Right. Now, when I run one, when I run two, when I run three together to say that who uses tactic one, two, and three together, right? You will get something from this which will be very specific to say, okay, this is a group or this is a software or these are the hashes that we're getting, right? You will additionally get that these are the techniques that are being used. If those techniques match, say even 60 to 70%, that you're saying, okay, hey, probably these techniques that somebody is using are very similar to this group, right? What you can hit again to say is that for this group, what are the mitigation techniques that I have? So now when you're getting your alert, it's not going to be anymore saying covert strike used on process or say on used on IP so and so with system hostname so and so or run DLL32.exe hosted on so and so, right? You will get an alert which says 1, 2, 3 is happening. Okay. These are the groups that basically use it. These are techniques which are similar to say group so and so, and this is the way we can mitigate it. Now, whether you want to take these mitigation actions automatedly or you want to just feed this back into your alert, which is actually going to your SOC teams, that is up to you.
So
Now,
this will be a small program, right, which will be in the environment and giving all this information once we have set an alert for these kind of attack or attack groups.
yes. So one way is to do it this way, right? The other way is very simple that you don't bother and you just have one attack explorer deployed. Okay. What you do is you keep passing logs to this attack explorer. It will keep hitting the attack framework for every log line. Okay. What this would do is, for example, if a log line matches and you get, say, in evasion technique, this flagged. So what I'm trying to say is, for example, yeah, let me just pick something which has more data. Yeah. For example, you just have the entire attack explorer and you keep seeing that, okay, there is something which is close to replicable through removable media. There is something which is saying registry run startup folders as well, right? So you start mapping data randomly across the attack surface. Okay. At the end of the day, what you can do is that over here, if you say that in the last 7 days, what are the attack techniques flagged, right? You will see each stage here which are getting flagged. For example, I get something like this. Now, what you can do is you can fire all these techniques to give you the tactics, the group, the softwares, and the mitigations. When you get all this information passively, this is not in an active structure, you will be able to tell if there is any specific group that is trying to attack you or not. Because you will see those specific groups start highlighting over here. For example, if I was seeing an attack, say for TrickBot, right? You will start seeing all this getting flagged on your attack explorer. Again, these will remain same. What might change are the hashes. What might change are the CNCs or the DNS names that we have. But remember to do this also. People who are just running generic attacks will not do it. If somebody is running targeted attacks, you will still figure it out. So now I am not reliant on threat feeds. I don't care whether I get a domain name blah 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 or I get a domain name blah blah blah. I don't care. I'm not bothered that I'm getting a hash value so and so coming in. All I bother about is, are these kind of things happening in my environment, or are these techniques being used in my environment? So now my reliance on those fields as such is there. Yes, if it gives it to me, very good. But even if it doesn't, I don't care. I still have a very structured way of looking at things, because remember, techniques are going to be limited for people to do it. I might not have threat intelligence information coming in from feeds to say what was the malicious file, right? I do not know. They change it very frequently. But if I know that in execution 1, 2, 3 of in persistence 4, 5, 6 is flagged, I can very well say to a certain percentage that I might be getting attacked by, say, a trickbot kind of group for which mitigations exist, and I can start firing those mitigations right away. Now you can question me that you know this is a trickbot because you clicked on it. How do I know this is a trickbot? You take all these tactics and techniques that we have, we hit it in the API, we get the group with it. How do you do that? By the APIs that I just showed it to you. Do I rely on thread feeds anymore? Do I need them? Question is open to you.
It sounds really good, but bit complicated to set up.
Not as much. I shared a screenshot with you last time as well, where we are also doing this. It is not very complicated to do, trust me.
Yeah, I think it's just the matter of time. If
Yeah.
you have people, you need a project team for sure.
See, threat intelligence requires dedicated resources. You cannot say that I will have one person do threat intelligence and I'm good to do it in my environment. And yes, we are doing cyber threat intelligence in our organization. Like I said in the first thing, or we spoke in the first two Saturdays, it requires dedicated amount of bandwidth. It requires dedicated amount of resources. It requires dedicated amount of time from your organizations as well. But if you do it, it gives you a lot of returns.
That's true. Because maximum nowadays, I have seen people are actually mostly dependent on the threat intel coming from third party?
See, we spoke about volatility of it, right? If that threat intelligence or I won't even call it threat intel, I'll call it threat feeds, right? If those threat feeds are good in terms of being validated, remember people who are attacking you are also consuming those feeds. And if thread feeds were so good that and it was so, doing its job, why are we still getting attacked day in and day out? Because people who are dedicated to attacking your infrastructure, who are looking at just your organization, they will know what they need to do. How easy is it for me to change a hash? How easy is it for me to change an IP address? 3 years back, 4 years back, we were heavily reliant on thread feeds. Nowadays, I am not even looking at it because the volatility is so much. People are using VPNs, people are using cloud, people are using SaaS. How long are we going to keep playing on IP addresses? What if that starts coming in IPv6? Then what are you going to do? Today, we're still being able to look at IPs because they're v4. I'll say only about 10-20% of the internet is still running v6, but if that starts coming on v6, it's going to start becoming a nightmare for all of you. How many IPs are you going to start looking at?
See, one thing which so the volume of work which is required for a small company or bigger company to get this intelligence out is almost the same. So it doesn't matter bigger or smaller, because the kind of intelligence we are trying to build is going to be the same.
Absolutely agreed.
Yeah.
It's just
What will be the
what
volume of team generally?
ideally, whatever you are seeing here, right? There are open source tools ready to do it for you. So if you think that I need to create all of this to start looking things up, I don't need to do that. There are open source tools to do it. The only thing you need to do is link your SIEMs or your attack sources to parse information here. So that is where the real effort comes in. In terms of team sizes for an organization which is small to medium size organizations, even like two to five people are enough to do it.
Okay. And that's pretty interesting. I mean, that's very.
So all this funda that you're seeing over here, all this, I can give you a software to do it. Like you will be able to set it up in like we set up TRAM, etc. Do it, you will set it up that easily, right? The problem that comes in is data sources need to be transferred to these kind of ingestion softwares. And then the second problem which comes up is scale. How many logs are you generating? I can't keep hitting attack for every line that I'm getting. You saw it is slow, right? It's not like that I'm going to hit it and I'm going to get a response in 1 second. So you need to cache data. You need to build that entire infrastructure there. Like I told you, it doesn't change very frequently. And why I don't care and why I don't bother about it is because I'm not looking at hashes. I'm not looking at thread feeds which change like every 1 minute. I need to keep hitting the internet for every 1 minute to get updated feeds. In this, things will not change too much. But yes, the only thing that you need to be very careful about here is if you're bringing in a new environment, you need to make sure you have coverage. What I mean by that is you're operating on Windows today, you're switching to a Linux environment. You need to make sure you have coverage there.
This is good stuff.
So we will be looking at softwares which can do it. I will be showing you at least 90% of the work we can even do with a Kali machine. And I'll show that to you. With the existing softwares that we have in Kali, we can do it almost 90% of the work that we have. So I'm not saying that don't use thread feeds. I'm not saying do it. I mean, you have to go this way. But all I'm trying to say is just think about in the last, say, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, however much time that you're using that and you're paying X amount of money for it, what is the value that is actually given you? And do you think that tomorrow somebody who's trying to attack you will have a threat feed or a hash or something that will basically be able to stop it? 10 years back, yes, maybe. Now, not at all.
Yeah, I was viewing a video. There's a person called David Bianco. I mean, he
Yeah.
was in FireEye. And that video makes sense. Let me post that video here.
Cool. Any questions on this part?
No, dude.
Right. I'm just going to export this once again and share it with you. All right. Just one last thing that we need to do here is about looking at ICS and enterprise and mobile work very similar, right? ICS is not covered under the attack CTI library that we've been using. We have to use the raw taxi and stick speeds for that. Uh, why is that? Because ICS is something which is very recently come up. Majorly because of the amount of IoT devices, the supply chain devices, the SCADA devices that we have, right? So for ICS, I will just show you how to do it. Don't get overwhelmed by how we can interact with it and all. But it is slightly little more complicated to do it because we need to interact with the direct sticks and taxi frameworks that we have. We don't have a specific way of just using a variable to get it. So I'll just show this to you. So for this, what we use is something called as a taxi2 client, right? And taxi2 clients basically help us to interact with raw taxi servers around the world. Currently, we are only connecting to the CTI server from attack. You can actually connect to any server that you want in the world. And how you do that is you can just define the URL over here. Okay. So when you're collecting this information from multiple servers, you want to get it from different kind of data sources that we have. You might have people defining their own sticks and taxi feeds. So you can connect to any server in the world for that. Sorry, this is got updated and okay, why I had to put taxi client.v20 over here is because taxi has two versions which have come up now, which is basically so taxi's come out with a new version which is 2.1, which they've enhanced certain support over there. So I'm still calling the old client. I'm still not very familiar with the commands on the new one, but basically what we need to do is that we connect to the server and we get feeds directly from the server. Attack or the attack CTI framework is also actually doing this at the backend, but you are not seeing that because it's not implicit. It's basically doing it at the backend for you. It's calling all these servers that we're looking at and collecting that information and getting it for you in the raw format. This is what they're basically doing. So you're importing your taxi client, you're defining a server. Why I have to define the routes is because I'm connecting to an HTTPS server, right? So I need to get the HTTPS connection going for that as well. If this was HTTP, you don't need to define the routes for that. Once you define the routes, what you can do is that we define in each collection that we are getting, oops, let us just print out the collection title. Let me see if it was this. So this is the absolute raw format of what you even saw in attack CTI, right? This is how we connect to the raw servers to get this information. And ICS currently is available in the raw format itself. Pre-attack that you're seeing over here has been did this. I think it stopped around 2 years back when we're not. So basically, pre-attack got merged with the enterprise attack framework itself, and they enhanced the enterprise attack framework. So pre-attack is not used anymore. Enterprise, mobile, and ICS are the three titles that we use, right? For this, if we only want to seek a specific route that is like the ICS attack route, we can just get that. How this information basically works is basis of IDs, right? Each route that we get has certain IDs, and how we interact with the raw sticks and taxi frameworks are using these IDs, right? These IDs do not change. So for example, if I want to interact with enterprise, I can just use the ID, this one. If I want to interact with pre-attack, this is the ID I use. If I want to interact with ICE, this is the ID that I use. Is this clear? So what we'll do here is we just pick up this and put it into a variable here. And we define the string for this. So you can call this anything that you want. It's not a structured or a mandated kind of thing that you require. And now what we're going to do is we're going to just import certain more libraries that are required uh, from sticks too. So basically what we'll be using is a collection source and filter. And what we also require is the collection from this. So what these two do is that it will help us hit the APIs and get this information for us. There are some variables that we need to define to get this working. These are standards. These again will not change, right? So collections are all available here at this URL. Again, I'm saying this URL is customizable. You can hit any URL that you have that you want to use. It doesn't have to be the meter.org URL that you're looking at, but you can basically get all your information. So currently where we're pointing us at is here. If you have a different site which is giving you stacks, your sticks and taxi frameworks, you can just change this URL to that site and you will be able to get that information as well. To get all information from ICE, we basically just use something called as a query filter, where we say that we want all attack patterns to come in. So this is basically we're looking at all of these issues to basically come up to us. I'm not actually looking at one specific kind of technique to get right now. And if you look at this, we can basically you will see the same kind of information that we were seeing earlier. But now this is something that we're picking up from the ICS framework. Further, if you want to uh, make it look pretty and all of that, the stuff remains the same, everything else remains the same, nothing changes from there. But this is how we can actually get more information about this. And if you want to specifically look at one kind of attack framework, if you want to if you want to look at one specific ID, you want to look at one specific pattern, all that process remains the same. So now all this information that we are getting is basically in this form, in this variable. And if you want to look at how many we have are around 90, it should be, we're probably pulling in more information which they haven't updated on the site. Is this part clear?
Yes, sir.
So I don't want you to learn these things like, I mean, I don't want you to mug them up, etc. These are something that you'll find on multiple ways to do it. But I just wanted to show you that you can get this information as well. This information, if you go back to, let me just see. Yeah, if you go back here, you will not see, or if, okay, they have put ICS as well. Sorry, I didn't know. That is my bad. All right, you don't need to do all this gimmick. You can just use the attack CTI for it. I didn't know they put in ICS as well. All right, same way follows. You don't need to change anything. You can ignore this. My bad. But if you want to pick in information from any different sticks and taxi servers, this is how you will do it, which is not basically attack CTI. Any questions? Right. One more software that I want you guys to use. If you have Kali, it should already be there. If you don't have Kali and you're using the Ubuntu machines, you can just run a command sudo apt install Maltego. Let me just see, this is available in the base for it. Okay. You'll have to use Kali for this, sorry. Do you guys have a Kali VM with you?
Yeah, let me start it.
Sure. So just start your Kali VMs and you can just take a 10-minute break for that before we get to it. Software name is basically called Maltego. It should be under information discovery. Let me also just boot my machine up. Where is Kali gone? If you're using Kali and you don't see Maltego over there, you can just run one simple command, which is sudo apt install Maltego. There are other ways of doing this as well. Maltego already has a community edition, which you can basically download on your systems as well. Just give me 1 second, I'll just point you in that direction. You can use this also on your Windows/Mac systems as well. Uh, the only thing that you'll need is a community edition account. So just you can create it on the site itself. But while you're registering, you'll get a link there as well. We look at it. Just open Kali and or just download this on your system, and I'll show you how to get it working. Hi folks, are we back?
Yes, sir.
Cool. Those who are on Kali, if you already have Maltego installed, just run it. If you don't have shared the command, you just need to run one command sudo apt install Maltego. It will install it for you. Once you open it the first time, it will ask you for to register or put in your email ID and password, which I've shared a link with you where you can register. You can use a disposable email ID also if you want. Uh, Once you do that, you should be able to reach a page like this. Once you're here, just let me know. If you're facing any challenges, let me know, please. Have we got it up and running? Any issues?
I missed a bit. So after this is on the browser, right?
No, this is basically either if you have Kali, just launch a Kali machine and you can run the sudo apt install command to install Multigo, or you can also download it to your Windows or Mac machines as well. It has exe DMG formats as well. I've shared the link for that to
Okay. So
activate.
now, yeah, it's just asking whether it'll be Multigo C free. That is what way to run.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You'll require an email ID and password to basically log in. I've shared the link with you to register it. You can use disposable IDs, but you need to activate it once. Any issues in installation?
Though my Linux machine is not up, is not working. I need to work with Reva machines. Just checking with the IT guy. Yeah.
Okay. You can also just install it on your base machine. It doesn't require anything. If you have Windows or Mac, you can also install it on your own machine.
Yeah, I'm doing that only. That also I tried. Something is happening. Maybe
Okay,
some space issues.
no problem. I'll just wait a couple of more minutes.
Sure. If few of them has already did, we can continue.
Sure. Anybody got this up and running yet? Or you still need some more time?
I think 1 or 2 minutes and I'll be done.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, are we there yet? No?
Yeah, it is done almost for me. I
All right.
just yeah.
Anybody else facing any issues? Okay, so I'll start. I mean, you can go back to this and go through the video and all checked out. So you want to do it later, but there's nothing much to it. I had told you that there are multiple ways of looking at OSINT information, right? How do you scrape deep dark web? How do you get information from social media, recon, all this information? How do we get it, right? There are multiple ways of doing it. Number one is that we hit up APIs for thread feeds for multiple places and we manage them locally, like API by API, and then we scrape data of that and then we keep it at us, like our side, right? The second way of doing it is using community editions like such, which basically do all this for you. Multicode does nothing but gives you ways of interacting with APIs from multiple solutions, more than about 70-74 solutions, right? And you can see the categorizations as well. For example, breaches and leaks kind of data is available here. Not all of them are free, obviously, because some of them are paid subscriptions. But what you can do is you can get your API key, you can put it here, and it can start working for you. We do have pretty decent ones which are free as well, which we can use. So the idea here is that for whatever information that we were looking at in terms of sticks feeds, in terms of even MISP that we had installed, etc., we can get all that information here. The idea is to source as much OSINT information about your organization from all these transformations that we use, right? What a transformation is nothing but a source where we can pick up information from. Okay. Uh, Now there are, you can also get sticks and taxi feeds here by default. These come in as well. You also can use multiple spaces like abuse IP, virus total, OTX, MISP. All of these work. All that we need to do is just install them, or we need to basically get them up and running. So first, what I'll do is I'll just install the ones which are free, which we can use. So for that, I'm just installing sticks feeds over here. Right, it takes about 2 to 3 minutes to install for every transformation that we add. What these transformations do is that we will provide some input and these transitions will basically get us information from whatever information they have in their feeds or in their stores. That information will basically pop out to me, right? So you can see all the transformations that exist over here. I'm just installing some of them to give you an idea of how we can use them, right? Some of them require API keys, which are free as well, but we need to go to the site and just subscribe to them like we've done. They'll give us an API key and we can install it. So I will just look at, so even OTX requires a API key right now, but I'm just installing some of them to show you what we can do. This OTX API key is also free. You can go to the Alien Vault site and get it from there as well. So you don't need to pay for them. So what you can do is you can just click on free with API key over here. All these that we are seeing over here, we can use via the API keys. These are all free. We don't have to pay for it, but we have to generate API keys for them, right? Idea is to gather as many sources as we can to give us the most information about anything that we want to search with. If you want to find out, say, social media breaches that are happening, there is a company called Echoes over here, right? For recon, there are multiple tools that exist. For TTPs, there are multiple tools that exist. So they basically classify all this information under various heads and give us one specific solution to get all this information from. For example, you want to go deep dark web scraping, etc. You want to do, you can do it via any of these tools as well, right? Some of them require a subscription, some of them require just an API key, which you can just get from these sites and just put it here. And that's about it, that how it will work, right? There are 2 or 3 ways of doing this, or how we want to search for information. The first way, I'll show you the manual way of how we can do it, right? The manual way is generally not used for anyone, but I'm just trying to show you how we can basically start using all of this, right? The moment you install any transformation, you will get these heads that you see over here in multiple areas, etc. that you're seeing, right? The more and more heads, like I installed sticks and taxi feeds, etc., you will start seeing these heads come up over here. Okay. What these heads basically do is gives you a transformation that we can gather information from whatever domain, IP address, email ID, etc. that we want, right? So whenever we are looking at a company's org data, right, the first thing that we want to look at is, say we want to get domain information, right? So what we do is we just gather a domain and we drop it over here. Now, for example, whatever domain you want to get, for example, I just type sans.org over here, right? You just come here and you say okay, and you right click on it, and you will see multiple things coming up over here by saying all transforms, standard transforms, which are basically available in the community edition, right? Or you can just go to all and see all of them as well. The moment you start installing more and more transforms in the sheet that we'd seen over here when we were starting off, right? The more and more transforms that you install over here, the more and more details you will start getting when you come and click or right click over here. Okay. For example, you want to search information for your domain. You can just say you want to get email addresses for domain. You click on this, it will run a transform for you from here. It will go search all the sites that you have existing, open source, etc., and pull out information for you and give that to you here, right? These are the information that are available for, say, this organization at the moment, which is available in public internet space. Okay. Additionally, if you want to find out say all NS records that exist for this domain, you can just come and right click on NS. You come here, you will be able to find out all name servers that exist for this domain at the moment. Okay. Similarly, what we're basically trying to get is try to gather as much information that we can gather on the public surface or deep web or dark web that we talk about. Now, for example, that we found out an email ID over here, right? You want to find out what entities exist with this email ID, you can go there and find that out. You want to find out locations or IP addresses within this, you can click on that and you can find out all the IP addresses that exist for this domain, right? You want to see the name servers or the A records which come up, you can come here and see all that information as well. You want to see phone numbers that are associated with it. So this is how we basically start digging information in terms of OSINT for any company that we do, right? There are multiple ways of doing this in terms of using open source feeds and getting it done. This is just a compressed combined UI version of doing that, right? I know you guys don't like to code too much. You guys don't like multiple solutions deployed, etc. That's why I said, okay, I'll give you one sort of solution which does OSINT and information gathering for us, and it will give you all that information, whatever is available on the sites as well. You want to find hash values, you can do that. You want to find IP addresses, you want to hit virus total, you want to hit abuse IP, you want to hit OTX, you can get all of that information over here, right? This is a manual way of doing it, which generally we do not use. The automated way of doing this is you go to something called as machines and you come up here and say new machine. Sorry, you come here and say run machine, right? On run machine, you will see different kind of layers that you can basically select. What this does is it involves more and more transforms on each different level. For example, if you only want to find out details from Wikipedia, etc., you can just click this. If you want to find out email addresses, domains which are available on the internet, and you want to find out all that information, click on Company Stalker. You want to find out basic footprints, you use L1. You want to find mild footprints, you use L2. You want to find detailed everything about a company, you use L3. If you want almost everything about infrastructure, everything that exists about that, you use footprint XXL. Okay. The more and more transforms you use, the more and more data you will get. But do remember, in the community edition, we have certain limitations on the number of requests we can make every day to these domains. If you want to find out information about a specific person, or you want to find out, say, a URL to network information where you want to get all domain information for that, you can just select one specific machine to trigger that. All right. For simplicity's sakes, because we have limitations also in the community edition, let's just select footprint L3. It gives us decent amount of information for a domain that we have. And you can just put in any domain that you want to figure out over here. You want to put in yours, you can do that. You want to put in any other domain name, you can put that. You want to put Google, you can put that. You click finish and you come here. So these are now limitations that we start seeing in the community edition that come up. So you just click OK over here and let this run its magic. What you will start seeing over here is they will start telling you that these are the MX records I've seen. Do you want to keep these or do you not want to keep this? Do you want to only search one specific MX or do you want to search both MXs, right? You click on next. They're telling you that these are the NSs that we've seen. Now, why is it asking you this? Because generally NS servers are replicated, so you might not want to hit each one of them and waste your credit. So you can just hit one of them as well, right? They will also give you all the existing domains that have been found with it. In case there is something that you want to focus on one domain, you can select that one domain. In case you want generic information, you can select all of these domains as well. So this is just basically refining your searches that we are seeing overall, working with your details that we are getting. This is further giving you more domains that you're seeing. So if you want to specifically concentrate on one, where is this getting this information? Is getting it from the NS servers. Okay. Once you're done with this, just wait for it to run. Like you're seeing over here, we have certain amount of credits that we get. So try not exhausting them by doing multiple searches like again and again. We try limiting its scope. We try limiting the scope for each search that we're doing, or if you want to do a specific one that we can do, right? Again, IP addresses that we're getting, the if you only select one of them, or if you think that they're replicas, then just try selecting one of them. You'll hit less searches. So click next again. It'll keep digging in more and more information for you. Let this run. You'll see that the transforms are running. You'll get a percentage over here, right? You again get what sites you want to keep. If you want to limit them, again, it's up to you. So say keep these. Once these are done, you will get sort of a bubble map like this. All right. When you get this bubble map, what you can do is just zoom into this and you will basically start seeing all information regarding to this map that we're seeing, right? So let me just zoom out a little more. So these are MX servers that we're seeing. These are sites that we're seeing. These are say the domains that we're seeing, right? Similarly, people, IP addresses, all of that information you will start seeing over here. This is just out of a couple of transforms that I have selected at the moment. If you install more transforms, you will start getting more and more information about those details as well, right? For example, where are these guys hosted? What is the AS number for that, right? What are the IP address ranges for them? This is another IP address range for them, right? Specific server IPs. So you can just keep playing around with this more and more. The sites that you're seeing, the NS records that you have, the MX records that you have. So this is like a global footprint of information that is available on the internet in multiple sources that you can get, right? So for example, I now know that these guys are hosted on DigitalOcean as well. They're also hosted on Amazon, right? So if you want information like this to do a OSINT about any organization, firm, etc., it is very easy to do. Okay. For example, now you want more information about each of these. So for example, there was an MX record. You want to find email IDs with this MX record that exist. You just run transforms that you can, right? And you will start getting more information from that. You want to get IP addresses. So you come here, you can just come here and click from here as well. So whatever information that you require, right? Payloads, URLs, webs, etc. Whatever details that you require about that, you can just start coming here and clicking manually as well. In case you feel this is not enough information, you want more information, you can come here, click run machine, do a footprint XXL, select the domain name again, and let this run. It'll ask you for similar information like it asked you last time as well, but it'll do a more in-depth search of that information at this point of time. You want to see how layers are connected, you can get different views over here. Okay. Now, what actually is the crux of this information is basically your transforms. So if you go back here and if you start looking at transforms that you see over here, and if you start enabling say virus total etc, or if you start enabling say Whois APIs that you have, or SSL certificates that you want to get details about, you can get all this information. Even have I been pawned, everything that you see over here, you can get all this information at click of buttons. Again, like I said, any transformations that you install manually, you can get for, or you can start running them from here itself. You will get all your transformations that you see over here. To run them, you can convert them into sticks and taxi feeds. You get domain information from taxi feeds. You want any kind of information converted to taxi, you can do that as well. So world is your playground. You can keep looking at it, do whatever you want from it. It's up to you. So how do we get information? This is how you get information. Any questions?
It's too much of information.
Yeah, it is. But at the end of the day, if you wanted deep dark web information, like I said, this is now raw information that you're getting. Now you process this information that you want, you change it into exploit data, or you change it into production data. It's up to you.
Yeah. Correct.
So this is a GUI way of doing things. Generally, I do not do them this way. We run them via scripts and APIs that we have. Gives a little more control on the data, but since that would involve a little bit of coding, that's why I said, okay, I'll give you a GUI way of doing it, and this is the way that you can do it.
Is Multigo the aggregator and we call Multigo and things will be working, or is it just a UI?
So Multigo is an aggregator. You're absolutely right. What it does is it, instead of coding individual APIs to all the 74 transforms that you've seen, Multigo basically does that for you.
Okay, it's a single interface with.
Yes, absolutely. So like the sticks and taxi feeds that we were getting right now, this basically has it coded in the backend.
Yeah, and they expose API for me to work with them.
Yes, absolutely. Any questions on this?
It looks okay.
Perfect. All right. Cool, folks. So we'll break for lunch. We'll catch up. After that, I want to discuss the quiz also for last time. I want to give you some insights into how we're going to have the final exam also for this. I also want to cover one or two more topics that I require to do. Uh, that we'll do post lunch, and we will then wrap up the course. I will also give you some time for Q&A in case you guys want to ask me any questions, and then we can close this.
Yeah, good.
Awesome, folks. See you at around 2:15. We'll start at about 2:15 then. And also, if you have any questions on your assignment, I have like one or two observations which I'll share with everybody. But if you have any questions, just let me know. All right, folks. Thank you. See you soon.